Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. Glad to have all my peeps in the chat room and my lurkers. They're lurking in the background, and the folks that's going to watch it later on Memorex. Glad to have you with me today. My goodness gracious, it's a pretty day here in Indiana.
Glad to have all my peeps in the chat room.
The sun keeps peeking in and out from behind the clouds, and there's a nice little breeze going out there, weighing pretty good in the trees. I've already been out and put my feet in the grass this morning. It's a beautiful day out there. I'd say it's probably around 70 degrees. I think it's supposed to get up around 80. Our warm days are probably getting numbered now that we're here at the 5th day of October. 5th day, 5 days into the month already. Wow. Halloween is approaching. For those of us that love Halloween, love to have a good time with the little fall party there. We're looking forward to the end of the month there to celebrate Halloween. Next month we got Thanksgiving, and next month we got Christmas, and then we got New Year's, and then we're in the dead of winter. Off for most of us. My goodness. Got a lot of news going on today. I've had to pick and choose what to bring to you because we don't have all day here. The first one that I've got for you, and all these URLs are in the description of the video for anybody new that might be watching that don't know that. You can check them out at your leisure if you want to know more about things. But the first one we have here is off of RT.com. It says, Russian embassy in Damascus shelled from terrorist-controlled area of Syria. And that's news going on there. It says Russian embassy in Damascus came under fire on Tuesday from a neighborhood controlled by militant groups, including Al-Nusra Front, the Russian Foreign Ministry reports. One of the mortar shells fired at the embassy complex hit the residential area, while two others landed near the embassy building, ministry said in a statement. Nobody was injured in the explosions. According to the report, the shelling came from the Jabar neighborhood of Damascus, which is under control of the terrorist groups Jabhat Fatah al-Sham and Falak ar-Rahman, I guess it's pronounced, the ministry said. The Jabhat Fatah al-Sham is the new name taken by Al-Nusra Front, the Al-Qaeda shoot-off, universally considered a terrorist organization. Rahman is a lesser-known Islamist group. Moscow said the shelling is a result of the actions of those who, like the U.S. and some of its allies, provoke the continued bloodshed in Syria and flirt with militants and extremists of all flavors. The ministry said Russia would take all necessary measures to return peace and security to Syria. The Russian embassy in Damascus has come under militant fire on several occasions. The Syrian capital remains under threat despite the efforts of the army to fend off armed groups. And there is a link that you can click on to read more about the bombings if you would like to do so. And with the drills going on in Russia right now, with, 40 million people going underground, and they're testing all their emergency stuff over there in Russia, I think this is to be taken very seriously. The next one that we have here is off of redstate.com. And waiting for my little hamster to catch up. It says winners and losers from tonight's vice presidential debate. This was as of last night. If you watched it, I watched part of it, the last part. In my opinion, I think Pence won hands down. I think the moderator left a lot to be desired, but we'll get into her here in a minute. Or not McCain, Kane. He's just a clown. Wow. He's just in time for Halloween as far as I'm concerned. We'll read this article. It says, tonight, Governor Mike Pence and Senator Tim Kaine faced off in the first and only vice presidential debate of the 2016 election. It was had more substance, and almost inconceivably may have seen more interruptions than the presidential debate last week. But unlike last week, this debate had a clear winner. The winners. Number one, it says Mike Pence. There's simply no question about it. Pence seemed calmer. He was more prepared to discuss his own policy views and get into details than Kaine was, and less interested in simply bashing the opponent's running mate. Pence had several great lines. Possibly the best was when he blasted Kaine's cheap shot, saying, "That's beneath even you and Hillary." Moderator Elaine Quijano, and says, "I know lots of folks will say she didn't have control of the debate." I'd be one of them. Says, "But for the most part, she asked substantive questions or just kept quiet and let them bury themselves or each other. That's who people want to hear from, not the reporter moderator." That's a win in my book, despite moments like this. And there's a video that you can see if you want to watch that. But I thought she was very poor, but that's just my opinion. Losers, it says Tim Kaine. Irritated, irritating, interrupting. Kaine clearly lost this debate. He couldn't manage himself. He was jumping on well-worn, nearly cliche, anti-Trump talking points in the first 10 minutes. He tried to be an attack dog, but came off more like a yipping pup nipping at the mailman's heels. He also had some inexplicable, like repeatedly claiming that Iran's deal ended Iran's nuclear ambitions forever. What? His worst moment, though, was interrupting Pence to basically say, "I saw 9/11 too." Just a terrible performance. And it says another loser was Donald Trump. It says, "Yes, Trump still comes out a loser. Sorry. First, Pence winning only shows how truly terrible Trump was during his debate. Second, Pence stole Trump's spotlight, and he hates that. He's going to try to win it back. This is a guy who was upstaging his own hand-picked speakers at his own convention by going on O'Reilly Factor during their airtime and talking smack. Grabbed the spotlight, and almost certainly in the dumbest way possible. Third, as bad as Kaine was, the constant repetition of everything awful thing Trump has ever said is a reminder of every awful thing Trump has ever said. For a worldwide-ish audience, it's a reminder they don't get all at once very much. A win for Pence doesn't necessarily mean a win for Trump Pence, but the embarrassingly bad performance by Kaine indefinitely reflected poor on Clinton's campaign. Overall, this debate proved that we can have policy discussions while reminding people that Hillary and Trump didn't. That this campaign can be about more than insults, while reminding people that Hillary and Trump traffic almost exclusively in insults, and that there can be some agreement on issues without betraying one's party, while reminding people that both parties constantly betray their own voters and the American people in general all the time. Quite the win-lose scenario. I don't know. I an excellent job. I thought that Trump did a pretty good job at the presidential debate, despite the fact that the whole thing was extremely one-sided from the moderator. So, in my opinion, I think that so far Trump's a winner on this, but I guess we'll have to wait. There's going to be a couple more debates coming up. The next one that I have here, speaking of the moderator, the politicalinsider.com, and my little hamster's trying to catch up to me here. I guess I'm going too fast for him this morning. It says, during vice presidential debate, shocking details about moderator were revealed. Well, it'll stop jumping around here on me. My little hamster must be on steroids. It says, you may have never heard of CBS News anchor Elaine Quijano. CBS News anchor Quijano was a surprise pick to be tonight's moderator. But now we're learning that Quijano is a vocal supporter of President Barack Obama's amnesty agenda. Hometown of Chicago, she broadcasts for CBSN, the digital streaming outlet for CBS, and has presented a heavily slanted view of states trying to react to America's ongoing immigration crisis. This is outrageous. Quijano may be a rising star at CBS, but it is her stance on immigration that could influence. Well, this thing's trying to play something here. We got to stop that. Stop it. For goodness sakes. Now it's going to jump around a while. Okay, I think we're back. I hate it when them things go to trying to play stuff over top of me. It says Quijano may well be a rising star at CBS, but it's her stance on immigration that could influence tonight's debate. Opponent of tough immigration laws in Arizona and Pennsylvania. The state of Arizona enacted the immigration laws in question, SB 1070 and HB 2162 in April 2010. The intent of the law was to deter illegal immigration, and as such, they came under some scrutiny. In its 2011 review of the laws, the U.S. Supreme Court down certain provisions, but upheld a provision allowing police to check a person's immigration status while enforcing other laws. Quijano criticized the laws, highlighting the struggle of Jose, an illegal immigrant living in Arizona. Everyday 23-year-old Jose fears he could be deported. His parents brought him to America illegally from Mexico when he was 2. Quijano said in her segment, he grew up in Pennsylvania feeling every bit. Wasn't until high school that he reached what it meant to be an illegal immigrant, that he could not pursue his dreams of joining the Air Force. Quijano also relayed the story of a Korean man living in the United States, a man named Yu, whose parents had come to the United States on visas in 1981. Most, if not all, undocumented go through a period of depression or severe depression, and even sometimes suicides. I think we're not machines, he told Quijano. You're locked behind these invisible bars. You can't drive, you can't vote, and then you see your peers moving on in life. Here's the full transcript of the shamefully biased report. And it says 6:38 p.m. Immigration protester, CBS Jeff Glore, says in Boston, hundreds of opposed to Arizona's controversial immigration law protested the presence of Arizona Governor Jan Brewer at a meeting there. The law is facing illegal challenges from the Justice Department. Arizona was the first, but likely will not be the last. Dozens of states right now are considering enacting similar immigration laws in the coming months. Elaine Quijano has this report from Pennsylvania. And Jose says, we want to come out of the shadows. And Elaine says, every day, 23-year-old Jose fears he could be deported. His parents brought him to America illegally from Mexico when he was 2. He grew up in Pennsylvania feeling every bit American, but wasn't until high school that he realized what it meant to be an illegal immigrant, that he could not pursue his dream of joining the Air Force. And Jose says, I lost all hope. I said, I can't join the armed forces. I can't get a good job. So basically, I got pushed into the shadows like any other undocumented. And Quijano says, Jose is one of the country's estimated 12 million illegal immigrants whose status is sparking heated debate. Debate and demonstrations have also interrupted, or I'm sorry, well, yeah, that's what it says, have also interrupted over a new Arizona law allowing police to check the immigration of status of anyone suspected of being involved in a crime. The recent CBS poll found a majority of Americans, 52%, supporting the law. Now other states are preparing to follow Arizona's lead. Partisan measures to compel construction companies to check worker status are moving swiftly through the legislature. Republicans State Representative Daryl Metcalf wants to go further, introducing a tough measure modeled after Arizona's law. And Daryl Metcalf says, as a nation, we have to set no amnesty policy, and we have to be very black and white about that, our border. Quijano says Metcalf's proposal is already facing fierce opposition here in Philadelphia, where more than half of the immigrant population is illegal. Mayor Michael Nutter says the solution lies with the federal government, not the states. Michael Nutter says we should not have a patchwork of immigration policies for every state in the United States of America. That's insane. And Quijano says Nutter believes create problems for law enforcement, making illegal immigrants afraid to report crimes to the police. Nutter says we do not want to send the wrong message to victims or witnesses. And Quijano says, but Representative Metcalf argues illegal immigrants strain city and state budgets by siphoning off health and social services that Americans pay for. Metcalf says, for decades in the past, the federal government has been AWOL in securing our borders and protecting American lives, liberty, and property. So we at the state level need to join together to do so. Quijano says, as politicians grapple with these issues, people like Jose wait and worry. Jose says, I don't remember Mexico. To me, this is my only home. And Quijano says, a country that continues to struggle with this decisive issue. Elaine Quijano, CBS News, Philadelphia. And the article goes on and says, how could the mainstream media pick someone to moderate a debate over immigration when there is clear bias here? Millions of illegals are flooded across America's borders, and it's clear that Quijano isn't an unbiased moderator. She's an activist. So there's that story about the woman that they had running the show last night. And I thought she was a very poor moderator, but hey, just my opinion. The next one we have here is off the dailymail.co.uk. And waiting for the hamster. Little fella, run! Okay, revealed how Bill Clinton plotted to bushwhack Attorney General on airport tarmac and got a promise that Hillary wouldn't be prosecuted over the classified emails. Clinton tell-all from Ed Klein titled Guilty of Sin spells out how Clinton charmed and intimidated Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Lynch was presiding over a Justice Department that nervously awaited the FBI's recommendation on whether or not to prosecute Hillary Clinton. Hillary had exposed classified information to hackers and foreigners by running her State Department emails through an unsecured server. Bill Klein writes, extracted a promise from Lynch that Hillary would never face criminal charges. Hillary Clinton was never in any danger of prosecution for mishandling classified documents on her infamous homebrew email server, according to a book set to rock the election season. The fix was in, thanks to Bill Clinton's plan to ambush Attorney General Loretta Lynch when their private jets were at the Phoenix airport at the same time. The former president told for a takeoff, according to Ed Klein in his latest book, Guilty of Sin, when a Secret Service agent told him Lynch was about to land. Don't take off, Bill shouted. The meeting, which began minutes later and lasted half an hour, took place just 1 week before FBI Director James Comey announced publicly that the Democratic presidential nominee was in the clear. It says one of Clinton's most trusted legal advisors told Klein that he took a call from the former president. The New York Post published a book excerpt spelling out what happened. Bill said, I want to bushwhack Loretta, the advisor told him. I'm going to board her plane. What do you think? And I said, there's no downside for you, but she's going to take a pounding if she's crazy enough to let you on her plane. He knew it would be a huge embarrassment to Loretta when people found out that she had talked to the husband of the woman, the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party, who was under criminal investigation by the FBI, the advisor explained to Klein. But he didn't give a damn. He wanted to intimidate Loretta and discredit Comey's investigation of Hillary's emails, which was giving Hillary's campaign agita. Bill Clinton ended up telling his Secret Service agent to call Loretta Lynch and set up a meeting on the tarmac. The advisor, who was not on the plane, said Clinton told him later that he noticed beads of sweat on Lynch's upper lip as she and her husband listened to the former president talk, sending a message that Hillary had a power base that included the full weight of the Clinton machine, the Democratic Party, and the White House. Bill said he could tell that Loretta knew from the get-go that she'd made a huge mistake, the advisor said. She was literally trembling, shaking with nervousness. Her husband tried to comfort her. He kept patting her hand and rubbing her back. Ultimately, Klein reports Lynch told the former president that there was no chance of his wife being indicted or prosecuted for exposing state secrets to hackers and foreign adversaries. She made the same pledge to President Barack Obama and his key advisor, Valerie Jarrett, even though the Department of Justice is nominally independent of the White House. And the easygoing Comey, who many observers pegged for a principled good egg, turned into a pragmatist driven by, according to Klein, huge ambition and an instinct for political survival. And there's some videos in this if you'd like to watch them at your leisure. It says not only would he risk his political future by recommending criminal charges against Hillary, but a not guilty verdict would mark him as one of American history's greatest fools. A week after the secret Clinton-Lynch meeting, Comey stood before cameras and laid out a forensic case why Hillary and her top aides were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. Lynch, an old friend of hers, told Klein that sat in her office seething. She had promised Bill there would be no black eye for his wife. She cursed him. She covered her eyes rather than watch his workmanlike explanation of all of Hillary's misdeeds. Then, in the blink of an eye, Comey turned 180 degrees. Although the U.S. Espionage Act doesn't require harmful intent in order to charge someone, merely negligence is enough, Comey insisted that this standard had only been used once before in history. Our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case, he declared. Klein concludes that Hillary was clearly guilty of sin, and the right thing would have been for Comey to make her pay for her sins, but he didn't. So there's that article. The next one that I have here, conservativetribune.com. And I'm waiting on the hamster. He's running as fast as his little legs will take him. It says, ouch, look what happened to Arizona newspaper after it endorsed Clinton. Cancellations, angry callers, that's what Arizona Republic is dealing with after endorsing Democrat nominee Hillary Clinton for president. According to the publication, was suffering after endorsing a Democrat candidate for president for the first time in history. Founded in 1890, the Republic has endorsed a Republican candidate for president in every election before this one. Editorial page of Phil Boas said, "We're feeling the weight of our history," the New York Times reported. In its endorsement of Clinton, the Republic that GOP nominee Donald Trump responds to criticism with the petulance of verbal spitwads. That's beneath our national dignity, it continued. Trump's long history of objectifying women and his demeaning comments about women during the campaign are not just good old boy goffs, the editorial added. They are evidence of deep character flaws. They are part of a pattern, said the Republic, without intending any irony, as it endorsed a candidate whose pattern of deep character flaws would have toppled her long ago, if not for the psychopathic adoration of the liberal mainstream media. Readers have been canceling their subscriptions at a furious clip, one cancellation every 10 minutes as of Thursday, outraged that the paper would openly support Hillary Clinton. However, Boas said that he does not regret the publication's decision. Never in unison on anything, but it wasn't a difficult thing, he said. It was the kind of thing that just evolved over time. Perhaps it's the only right thing that they suffer for their decision. They should have known that Arizona, a red state, would not be pleased. Perhaps the media should stay out of politics altogether. And let's not forget, spitwads didn't kill anyone at Benghazi. So there you have the information on the Arizona Republic. The next one we have is off BizPac Review. It says New York Times makes itself the first martyr in the media's holy war on Trump. Opted views and opinions expressed are solely those of the author and do not necessarily represent the views of BizPac Review, it says. Okay, the article reads, Trump has played the media all along in the presidential race. Did he just hand the New York Times the sticks of dynamite to blow themselves up? A mysterious letter arrived that was sent to the paper anonymously through the mail with a return address of Trump Tower. What was inside was part Trump's fabled tax returns. Never mind, they were from 20 years ago. It showed Trump, the businessman, took bona fide loss on his taxes, astronomical loss, and the New York Times couldn't wait to print it. And that's where there is some real trouble on the table. Trump did not explicitly give his permission to the paper to run it. And they know full well that doing so would be a violation of the law. Dean Banquet, an executive editor of the New York Times, admitted in a public forum in mid-September that he would absolutely go to jail to publish Trump's tax returns if given the chance to run them. Editor Banquet's public admission demonstrates clearly knowledge of the law prior to breaking it, including this statement: you know what your lawyers would tell you if you publish them, you go to jail. Worse, Banquet is what is known as a key employee, not some beat reporters who stumbled on something in the trash cans behind Trump Towers and then convinced the press room to run it without the editor's knowledge. That makes them even that much more culpable. Remember only 2 months ago that this is the same New York Times. One of their reporters floated the idea of abandoning their journalistic standards to attack Trump at some sort of civic, if not patriotic, duty. But here's an interesting question. Did all this happen with Trump's knowledge? Trump has been proven to be master of manipulating the press using game theory, a staple of any business strategy course. He would know that dangling his own tax returns in front of the New York Times, that they would absolutely blow up their journalistic credibility to run the story. Why would Trump do it? Perhaps Trump, the author of Trump, The Art of the Comeback, is setting the stage to showcase his comeback. Knowledge of the law, knowing that he needed Trump's explicit written permission to run the story, Banquet instead went ahead with it. One wonders if all that was missing was the shout of Allah Akbar before hitting the print button. So the next one that we have, we can get the little hamster to run here. This is off of girlsjustwannahaveguns.com. Interesting website. This one says, breaking news, Hillary's leaking heart valve, arrhythmia, and secret medical checkups. And it says these are some pretty concerning conditions. And guess what else? Obama wasn't buying Hillary's story that she was just tired, so he arranged for a secret checkup, probably because it included a brain scan. Exclusive new information regarding Clinton's health. President Obama is so concerned about Hillary Clinton's health that he recently offered to arrange a secret medical checkup for her at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Hillary declined the offer because she feared the media would find out about her Walter Reed visit and learn the truth about her medical condition, that she is suffering from arrhythmia and abnormal heartbeat valve, chronic low blood pressure, insufficient blood flow, a tendency to form life-threatening blood clots, and troubling side effects from her medications. Hillary has arranged her own secret medical visits to the New York Presbyterian Hospital, where she arrives through a private entrance out of public sight and where she can rely on her doctor's discretion not to speak to the media. Coumadin, a blood thinner, and a beta blocker to treat her arrhythmia and heart valve problem. However, these medications have side effects of making her drowsy and tired and lowering her blood pressure, leading to frequent bouts of lightheadedness and fainting spells. And there's excerpts from Klein's book if you want to read those at your leisure. I think that pretty much, covers the idea of this article. So, you can read those excerpts at your leisure. The next one we have here is off of westernjournalism.com. It says, Trump issues demand to Obama about Clinton and her co-conspirators. Presidential nominee Donald Trump demanded Friday that President Barack Obama not pardon Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton to shield her from future prosecution related to scandals concerning her use of private email server and favors done by State Department staff for Clinton Foundation donors. Trump made Clinton focus of remarks he made in Novi, Michigan, Friday night. If she gets the chance, she will put the Oval Office up for sale like she always does, he said. And here's a demand I'm making to, well, wait a minute, that skipped on me. Let me back up here. It says, remember, folks, she's been doing this for 30 years. She deleted and bleached 33,000 emails after a congressional subpoena. You can't do that, Trump said. Trump then added a new challenge. And here's a demand I'm making today to President Obama. Mr. President, will you pledge not to issue a pardon to Hillary Clinton and her co-conspirators for their many crimes against our country and against society itself, Trump said. There is a vital principle involved. No one is above the law. Clinton and her cronies will say anything, do anything, lie about anything to keep their grip on power, he said. Trump also came down hard on Clinton with a separate demand. So here's my question for Hillary Clinton. Can you promise that not one of the 5 people who were granted criminal immunity will ever be allowed to serve in the Clinton administration? He said. Has said before that Clinton activities broke the law. Who uses 13 different cell phones in 4 years? The only people that use that many cell phones are usually involved in very, and I mean very shady activity, Trump said in Greenville, North Carolina last month. This is a phony group of lying people. No one takes all of the risks Hillary Clinton took unless they are trying to cover up massive crimes, he said. This is like third world country, folks. It's terrible. This is really. Do we bring it up? This is like Watergate. Only it's worse because here our foreign enemies were in position to hack our most sensitive national security secrets, Trump said at a Greenville rally. Trump has long alleged that politics alone prevented Clinton from being prosecuted over her use of private email server to send and receive classified documents. If this were a Republican, somebody would already be indicted, he said last year after Clinton's actions were probably criminal. I think almost you could say almost certainly criminal, and it looks to me like she's not going to be prosecuted, and that's only because the prosecutors are Democrats. Below this article, if you want to read what other folks have to say about this. The next one that we have here is off of survivaldan.com or survivaldan101.com, I guess. It says MIT researchers are not able to prevent a wide-scale grid-down blackout collapse. And get the ads shut off of this so I can read it. It says the U.S. government has known it for a long time. One of the weakest links in our infrastructure is our fragile, outdated electrical grid, where a single failure in the system, such as a downed power line or tripped relay, can cause our power outages throughout a neighborhood, a town, or even an entire city. Even worse, our enemies know of how weak our networks are, and former CIA Director James Woolsey warned that the one thing that kept him awake at night is a grid down blackout. And researchers are scrambling to prevent a wide-scale grid down blackout collapse. Now, most of the time, a single failure won't bring down an entire power grid, which is why you may have a blackout in your home, but the lights may be on across the street, which may be hooked up to a different segment of the grid, but not always. It's our outdated power grid that was pulled offline in 2003 from a single tree branch in Ohio, where we saw 50 million citizens of Northeast United States and Ontario plunge into darkness, the largest blackout in North American history so far. And again, in 2012, India experienced the largest power outage ever, as 700 million people, nearly 10% of the world's population, went without power as a result of a simple tripped line relay failure. But it's when you have a pair of failures occur at the same time, for example, a down transmission line or generator short circuit, that's when you really begin to see the risk of a wide-scale power grid failure start to climb. That's why researchers from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT, have been trying to identify the number and location of power networks' weakest points, these pair failures that could trigger a grid down collapse. Living without power, cars, electronics, or running water may seem like a nightmare scenario, but to pioneers, it was just a way of life. It's just the way life was. Having the skills to survive without modern conveniences is not only smart in case the SHTF, it's also environment. Keep in mind that the key to a successful homestead does not only lie in being able to grow your own food, but on other skills as well. Learning these skills will take time, patience, and perseverance, and not all of these skills are applicable to certain situations. Hopefully, though, you manage to pick up some great ideas that will inspire you and get you started. Just like our forefathers used to do, the Lost Ways book teaches you how you can survive in the worst case scenario with the minimum resources available. And you can order this book on this site that will help you if you're trying to, prep for any kind of a disaster. So far, they've only been able to look at the country of Poland's power grid because they have the most centralized, publicly available data. What they discovered was that in analysis of the country's grid of 3,000 components, there were nearly 10 million potential pair failures. Of those 10 million, MIT's algorithm identified 5,000 that could snowball into wide-scale catastrophe. I personally find that pretty scary, don't you? Unfortunately, things get more difficult when you try to analyze the United States. For one, our power grid isn't centrally controlled by one entity. It's made up of independent power businesses and co-ops that don't typically share data, and there's the vast size. In just the northeastern U.S., we have more than 100,000 components, up to 5 billion potential pair failures. MIT's algorithm co-creator, Konstantin Taritsin, even said the number of ways in which a grid can fail is really enormous. If the numbers are anything like current experience, that would mean that there are potentially as many as 2.5 million potential weak spots that could trigger a wide-scale collapse. And that's just in the northeastern United States. That means that the entire United States, 10 million or more grid down blackout triggers across the country. Now, do you see why the government has been concerned about our outdated network that are basically held together with chewing gum, duct tape, and hope? A grid down failure means no water, no food, no fuel for transportation, no sanitation, no telecommunications, no medical supplies, no access to bank accounts. Yes, folks, we're talking about real world apocalypse. And that would throw us back to the dark ages, literally. That 9% of the population will completely freak out once the system that they've all become dependent on is pulled out from underneath them. In fact, former CIA Director Woolsey himself predicted that up to 9 in 10 Americans could be killed if we were to experience a massive grid down blackout scenario. Look, my friend, the time to prepare your grid blackout survival plan is now. But the skills and supplies you need for this type of wide-scale disaster is different than other scenarios you may face. And you may have to be sneaky about it because you don't want to become shop for all your neighbors to come for food, water, and necessities when the lights go out, right? The best plan I've seen so far that helps you prepare for this specific threat that we face right now is this grid down blackout survival guide. It assumes the worst case scenario, long-term grid collapse, and shows you how not only to prepare now, but also how to survive during worldwide scale blackout. So there you have that article, and it sounds like a pretty good book. I personally have not read it, but you can get it physical or you can get it digital. I strongly suggest physical because if the grid goes down, you're not going to be able to read the digital. The next one we have for you here is off the dailybeast.com, and this says Pentagon paid for fake Al-Qaeda videos. PR firm known for representing unsavory characteristics was paid millions by Pentagon to create fake terrorist videos. Controversial UK PR firm over $500 million to run top secret propaganda program in Iraq, the Bureau of Investigative Journalism can reveal. Bell Pottinger's short TV segments made in the style of Arabic news networks and fake insurgent videos, which could be used to track the people who watched them, according to a former employee. The agency's staff worked alongside high-ranking U.S. military officers in Baghdad Camp Victory headquarters as the insurgency raged outside. Bell Pottinger's former Bell confirmed the Sunday Times, which has worked with the Bureau on this story, that his firm had worked on a covert military operation covered by various secrecy documents. Bell Pottinger reported to Pentagon, the CIA's National Security Council, on its work in Iraq. He said, Bell, one of Britain's most successful public relations executives, is credited with honing Margaret Thatcher's steely image and helping the Conservative Party win 3 elections. The agency he co-founded has had a roster of clients, including repressive regimes and Asma al-Assad, the wife of Syrian president. In the first media interview, any Bell Pottinger employee has given about the work for the U.S. military in Iraq, video editor Martin Wells told the Bureau victory was shocking, eye-opening, and life-changing. The firm's output was signed off by former General David Petraeus of the coalition forces in Iraq, and on occasion by the White House, he said. Bell Pottinger introduced reams of material for the Pentagon, some of it going far beyond standard communications work. The Bureau traced the firm's Iraq work through U.S. Army reports by the Defense Department's Inspector General and federal procurement transaction records, as well as Bell Pottinger's corporate filings and specialist publications on military propaganda. We interviewed half a dozen former officials and contractors involved in information operations in Iraq. Types of media operations commonly used in Iraq at the time, said military contractor familiar with Bell Pottinger's work there. White is attributed, it says, who produced it on the label, the contractor said, is unattributed, and black is falsely attributed. Ops used for tracking who is watching certain things were pretty standard part of the industry toolkit. Bell Pottinger is working in Iraq media operation, which cost over $100 million a year on average. A document unearthed by Bureau shows the company was employing almost 300 British and Iraqi staff. The London-based PR agency was brought into Iraq soon after the U.S. invasion in March 2004. It was tasked by the country's temporary administration with the promotion of democratic elections activity, which it trumpeted in its annual report. The firm soon switched to less high-profile activities, however. The Bureau has identified transactions worth $540 million between the Pentagon and Bell Pottinger for information operations and psychological operations on a series of contracts issued from May 2007 to December of 2011. A similar contract at around the same annual rate, $120 million, was in force in 2006, we have been told. The bulk of the money was for costs such as production and distribution, Lord Bell told the Sunday Times, but the firm would have made around 15 million pounds a year in fees. Martin Wells, the ex-employee, told the Bureau he had no idea what was into when he was interviewed for the Bell Pottinger job in May of 2006. He had been working on a freelance video editor and got a call from his agency suggesting he go to London for an interview for a potential new gig. You'll be doing new stuff that'll be coming out of the Middle East, he was told. I thought that sounds interesting, Wells recalled. So I go along, go to the building, get escorted up to the 6th floor in a lift, come out, and there's guards up there. I thought, what on earth's going on here? And it turns out it was a Navy post, basically. So from what I could work out, it was media intelligence gathering unit. After a brief chat, Wells asked when he would find out about the job and was surprised by the response. You've already got it, he was told. We've already done our background checks on you. Flying out on Monday, Wells was told. It was Friday afternoon. He was asked where he'd be going and got a surprise answer: Baghdad. So I literally had 48 hours to gather everything I needed to live in a desert. Days later, Wells' plane executed a corkscrew landing to avoid insurgent fire at Baghdad airport. He assumed he would be taken to somewhere in the green zone from which coalition officials were administering. Instead, he found himself in Camp Victory, a military base. The British PR firm which had hired him was working at the heart of a U.S. military intelligence operation. A tide of violence was engulfing the Iraq capital, as well as Wells began his, A tidal of violence was engulfing the Iraqi capital as Wells began his contract. The same month he arrived there were 5 suicide bomb attacks in the city, including one suicide car bomb, Camp Victory, which killed 14 people and wounded 6 others. Describing his first impression, Wells said he was struck by a working environment very unlike what he was used to. It was very secure building, he recalled, with signs outside saying, do not come in, it's classified area. If you're not cleared, you can't come in. 3 rooms with lots of desks in it, said Wells, with one section for Bell Pottinger staff and the other for U.S. military. I made the mistake of walking into one of the U.S. military areas and having a very stern American military guy basically drag me out saying, you are not allowed in here under any circumstances. Highly classified, get out. Whilst his hand was on his gun, which was a nice introduction, said Wells. It soon became apparent he would be doing much more than just editing news footage. Of 3 types of products. The first was television commercials portraying Al-Qaeda in a negative light. The second was news items which were made to look as if they had been created by Arabic TV, Wells said. Bell Pottinger would send teams out to film low-definition video of Al-Qaeda bombings and then edit it like a piece of news footage. It would be voiced in Arabic and distributed to TV stations across the region, according to Wells. The American news items were sometimes kept hidden. Revelations in 2005 that PR contractor, the Lincoln Group, had helped the Pentagon place articles in Iraq newspapers, sometimes presented as unbiased news, led to a Department of Defense investigation. The third and most sensitive program described by Wells was the production of fake Al-Qaeda propaganda films. He told the Bureau how the videos were made. Precise instructions. We need to make this style of video, and we've got to use Al-Qaeda footage, he was told. We need it to be 10 minutes long, and it needs to be in this file format, and we need to encode it in this manner. Take the CDs on patrol and drop them in the chaos when they raided targets. Wells said if they were raiding a house and they were going to make a mess or stuff anyway, they just drop an odd CD in there. CDs were set up to use Real Player, media streaming application which connects to internet to run. Wells explained how the team embedded a code into the CDs which linked to a Google Analytics account, giving a list of IP addresses where the CD had been played. The tracking account had very restricted circulation list, according to Wells. The data went to him, a senior member of the Bell Pottinger management team, and military commanders. Wells explained in their intelligence value, if one is looked at in the middle of Baghdad, you know there's a hit there, he said. If one 48 hours or a week later shows up in another part of the world, then that's a more interesting one. And that's what they're looking for more, because that gives you a trail. CD turned out or turned up in some interesting places, Wells recalled, including Iran, Syria, and even America. Print out for the day, and if anything interesting popped up, hand it over to the bosses, and then it would, he said. Then Pentagon confirmed that Bell Pottinger did work for them as contractor in Iraq under the Information Operations Task Force, IOTF, producing some material that was openly sourced to coalition forces and some which was not. They insisted that all material put out by IOTF was truthful. Was not the only mission Bell Pottinger worked on, however. Wells said some of Bell Pottinger's work was carried out under the Joint Psychological Operations Task Force, or the JPOTF, which the United States defense official confirmed. The official said he could not comment on detail on the JPOTF activities, adding, "We do not discuss intelligence gathering methods for operations past and present." Stood down as chairman of Bell Pottinger earlier this year, told the Sunday Times that the deployment of tracking devices described by Wells was perfectly possible, but he was personally unaware of it. Bell Pottinger's output was signed off by the commander of coalition forces in Iraq. Wells recalled, "We'd get 2 colonels in to look at the things we'd done that day. They'd be fine with it," to General Petraeus. Some of the projects went even higher up the chain of command. If Petraeus couldn't sign off on it, it would go up the line to the White House, and it was signed off up there, and the answer would come back down the line. Petraeus went on to become director of the CIA in 2011 before resigning in the wake of an affair with a journalist. The awarding of such large contract to British company created resentment among the American communications firms jostling for Iraq work, according to former employee of the Bell Pottinger rivals. Nobody could work out how a British company could get hundreds of millions of dollars of U.S. funding when there were equally capable U.S. companies, said Andrew Garfield, an ex-employee of the Lincoln Group, who is now senior fellow at Foreign Policy Research Institute. The American companies were pissed. Ian Tunnicliffe, a former British soldier, was the head of 3-person panel from the Coalition Provisional Authority, CPA, a transitional government in Iraq following the 2003 invasion, which awarded Bell Pottinger their 2004 contract to promote democratic elections. According to Tunnicliffe, the contract, which totaled $5.8 million, was awarded after the CPA realized its own in-house efforts to make people aware of the transitional legal framework ahead of the election were not working. Hasty, but still competitive bid for communications companies to come in, recalls Tunnicliffe. Tunnicliffe said Bell Pottinger's consortium was one of 3 bidders for the contract and simply put in more convincing proposal than the rivals. Iraq was a lucrative opportunity for many communications firms. The Bureau has discovered that between 2006 and 2008, more than 40 companies were being paid for services such as TV and radio placement, video production, billboards, advertising, and opinion polls. These included U.S. companies like Lincoln Group, Leone Industry, and SOS International, as well as Iraq-based firms such as Cradle of New Civilization Media, Babylon Media, and Iraqi Dream. The Bureau was able to trace went to Bell Pottinger. According to Glenn Siegel, who worked in Operations Task Force in Iraq in 2006, contractors were used partly because the military didn't have the in-house expertise and partly because they were operating in a legal gray area. In 2011 article, Covert Intelligence Provisions in Iraq, Siegel notes that U.S. law prevented the government from using propaganda on the domestic population of the U.S. In a globalized media environment, operations could theoretically have been seen back home. Therefore, it was prudently legal for the military not to undertake all the activities, Siegel wrote. Siegel maintains that information operations program did make a difference on the ground in Iraq. Some experts question this, however. In 2015, study by RAND Corporation, a military think tank, concluded that generating assessments of efforts to inform, influence, and persuade has proven to be challenging across the government and DoD. Operations on behalf of the U.S. government stopped in 2011 as American troops withdrew from Iraq. Bell Pottinger changed ownership after management buyout in 2012, and its current structure has no connections with the unit Wells worked for, which closed in 2011. It is understood the key principals who were involved in this unit deny any involvement with tracking software as described by Wells. Wells left Iraq after less than 2 years, having had enough of the stress from working in a war zone and having to watch graphic videos of atrocities day after day. Looking back at his time creating propaganda for the U.S. military, Wells is ambivalent. The aim of Bell Pottinger's work was to highlight Al-Qaeda's senseless violence, he said. Publicity, which at the time he thought must be doing some good, but then somehow, I wondered whether this was the right thing to do, he added. Lord Bell told the Sunday Times he was proud of Bell Pottinger's work in Iraq. We did a lot to help resolve the situation, he said. Not enough. We did not stop the mess which emerged, but it was part of the American propaganda machinery. Whether the material achieved its goal, no one would ever really know. And Wells, I mean, if you look at the situation now, it would appear to have worked, but at the time, who knows? If it saved one life, it was a good thing to do. Have that information on propaganda has out. I have mixed feelings on it. I mean, wow, you know, our tax dollars at work, they don't even know if this really worked or not. I'd like to know that they had more positive figures on how well this actually worked. What I have here is off of Inc.com. It says fewer veterans are starting their own businesses, and here's why it's a problem. Is not an easy path for anyone, but for veterans, it appears to be getting harder. And that's troubling for military veteran business owners, of course, and for the fellow service members they would hire. But it's also a big problem for the entire U.S. economy. Last century, a stunning 49.7% of World War II vets went on or operate a business, according to Syracuse University's Institute for Veterans and Military Families. Some 40% of Korean War veterans did the same, creating millions of jobs along the way. But this century, while the time span has been shorter, the rate of veteran entrepreneurship has been discouragingly low. Only 4.5% of the more than 3.6 million people who have served in the U.S. military since September 11th of 2001 have launched a company, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That amounts to roughly 162,000 veteran-owned businesses. Average such company employs about 2 people and estimated 324,000 jobs. About 200,000 people leave the service each month, adding to the ranks of veterans who may become entrepreneurs. But if this generation were creating businesses at a rate closer to those who came home after Korea, they'd have started about 1.4 million companies already, and that would have created about 2.8 million jobs. The differences are so stark it's unbelievable, says Joseph Kopser, an Army veteran and co-founder of transportation app Ride Scout. He blames a lack of in-service mentorship for current military members, saying that too many vets now get a job and settle rather than launching their own businesses. Other explanations for the drop-off too, starting with drastic changes in the economy. Overall, entrepreneurship are down across the board, and gone are the days when a returning soldier could easily segue from running a platoon to running line and then move up through management, along the way gaining necessary skills to start the business. Those manufacturing jobs has mostly vanished, eliminating what was once an important bridge from the military to the civilian world. While vets tend to be more entrepreneurial than the average person, today's vets also have fewer resources than their predecessors did. For example, while this century's version of the GI Bill is considered one of the most generous, it does not provide access to low-interest loans to start businesses. The GI Bill of World War II did. I did approach banks at first, says Tim Smith, an Army veteran and founder of Patriotic Commercial Cleaning in St. Louis, but I didn't have a 2-year business history, so I couldn't get any financing. He eventually was able to get a low interest loan, profit work vessels for veterans, and said he initially wouldn't have been able to make payroll without it. Beyond the economic and job creation problem, the recent decline in new veteran is a vicious cycle for returning military personnel. Fewer veteran-founded companies means fewer jobs for veterans and fewer employers who can create the sorts of businesses in psychological environments most comfortable for their returning. That means fewer bosses who understand the difficulty of regenerating after war or toll of PTSD or more visible war wounds, let alone offer jobs to those suffering from it. In 1996, according to the Ewing Foundation, vets founded 12.3% of all new businesses by 2014. That number has sunk to 5.6%, and those who once served in the armed forces are 30% more likely than other employers to hire other veterans, according to a 2012 study from the International Franchise Association. Some stigma when it comes to employment. People are afraid to hire vets, says James Schulming, an Air Force veteran and executive vice president for the Student Veterans of America, a nonprofit network. Todd Connor, a Navy veteran and CEO of the Bunker Labs incubator for veteran-owned businesses, also says that veterans today may be less well positioned to do the network vitally to successfully. Try it again. Goodness gracious. Todd Connor, a Navy veteran and CEO of the Bunker Labs incubator for veteran-owned businesses, also says that veterans today may be less well positioned to do the networking vital to successful entrepreneurship. Drew from all segments of society. But in this century's all-volunteer armed forces, service members are more likely to come from military families. As a result, says Connor, they are increasingly isolated of Americans who will not serve in the military. That means they lack the outside networks to become successful entrepreneurs, to become role models, to see that it is even possible for them. Those who do develop best networks often credit factors outside the military. In the armed forces, commissioned officers are overwhelmingly college-educated white men, sometimes with credentials from West Point or the Ivy League. They may not have much by way of savings when they leave the military, but they often are well connected and appealing to both universities and investors. Despite all the hurdles, some veterans are leading the entrepreneurial charge, especially over the gender gap. Women vets are starting businesses at rates that far outstrip those of their male peers, civilian and former military alike. Between 2007 and 2012, Census Bureau data, the number of women veteran-owned companies almost quadrupled to about 383,000 from just 97,000. 2.5% of veteran business owners. By 2012, that number had climbed to 4.4%. Government contracting preferences have recently made it more attractive for a company to be woman-owned. So some of the numbers may reflect paperwork changes, such as dropping a husband from a co-owner title rather than broad-based demographic shifts. But those numbers also reflect the work of vets like Tabitha Turnman, who's built a thriving financial and accounting contracting, who's built a thriving financial and accounting contractor on her own. And Dawn Halfacker, who's lost an arm in Iraq when her Army unit was hit by rocket-propelled grenades. In my mind, there's no question that my military training has helped me become a better entrepreneur, she says. Halfacker, now the founder and CEO of Halfacker and Associates, contractor. You go through so much in the military, but the military is teaching you is how to be resilient, Halfacker says. You plan a mission and then you execute, but nothing ever goes according to plan. Your job is to continue to lead and not in not ideal circumstances, she says. That information on veterans and starting businesses. The next one that I have for you is a screen share. So we're going to try to get this up here where you can see it. We'll go to the screen share button. This is going to be your feel good for today. I thought this was a cute little story and a lot of good stuff coming out of it. I think we've got that up and running. It's about a 3-minute video. So here we go with this.
Today, you're going to be our special undercover agents. Alright? So, do you guys know what the goal is today? Random acts of kindness. Exactly. Today we're going to be focusing on the elderly. So your goal is when they come out of the grocery store to be of any kind of service to them. Who's all in with me today? Team? Okay, so today let's go be kind, okay? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Be kind! Yeah, we can help you with all this. We're doing it for Talking Up TV, and we're helping out elderly people and people that need help. You're welcome. And you said entrance. You have a good day too. Okay, so have a good day, man. Back up, I need the flower girl. Go away, come on. I need some help. Come on. Thanks for watching Talking Up TV.
So there's that. I thought that was cute. And those kids are learning a good lesson in helping others. And they can be value to all of us, teaching us all that we need to be good to other people and help them as much as we can. Random acts of kindness. Sometimes that's all it takes. I'll catch y'all loose for today. I'm glad you joined me, and if you liked it, you can give it a thumbs up, and you can share the video around so other people get to hear what's going on in the world that they're not going to hear on mainstream. I hope y'all go out today and stick your feet down in the grass, ground yourself, and take a nice deep breath of fresh air and be glad you're waking up above ground. These are the best days of your life. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye.